to another episode of Let's Build HubSpot Properties with Matthew Ruxton. How you doing, Matthew?
Doing good. How are you, Chris?
I am doing great. It is
November 1st.
Happy Friday, November 1st, 2024. Got enough exposure to Halloween yesterday, just the right amount for me. Like was
Hmm.
going, dropping off and picking up, the kid from the rich neighborhood, giving out all the candy bars. Um, where there's a start like somebody new to the neighborhood, spent like $200 on candy to give. I'm just like, okay. Uh, and like one of the other neighbors like came and said, yeah, you got to do that. Like there's no option here. Like this is the place to go on the map, like for kids to take trick
Oh
or
man.
treats. It's
I
like,
know like this was the first year that we've had, I feel like, I mean, I've been in this community now since like 2020. So this is like fourth or fifth Halloween that we've done here. Like arguably in 2020 it was like phase one. So like there was only like maybe like less than 100 houses the first year. But people got really into it. So like as we grow and people continue to get really into it. And we have a couple of houses that go like way overboard with Halloween decorations and like to an excessive point that I'm jealous. I'm like, I wish I had the space to store all those Halloween decorations. But I we have surprisingly a lot of people who cater to the adults more than the kids. Like, 'cause I think the age group we have a lot of young families. It's a lot of families with very young kids. And their parents, and we're all tired because we have young kids, so they appreciate that. And there's a lot of Jello shots and a lot of alcohol available. And you're like, you get the full size candy bar for the kids and the bottles of liquor for the adults. And I'm like, okay, that's the neighborhood we have become. I'm like, okay. I gave a high value. I was like ready for Halloween to be over. I'll be honest, because I'm definitely a Christmas person more than a Halloween person, but also Halloween from like we just Halloweened hard this year. I feel like before we got to Halloween. So by the time I got to October 31st, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to be done now. But yeah, no, it's a wild holiday. It's one of those weird holidays, right? Because like for the most part, I think there's a very small group of people that don't celebrate it, but for the most part, it's kind of like Thanksgiving. It's like one of those holidays that's become very American, and like everyone in America gets behind it no matter what, which is nice. In our current climate, like everyone was just like, it was one of those ones I drove through the neighborhood on our golf cart, and I was like, man, this feels very like 90s. Somebody can post this morning on Facebook, very 90s movie esque. Like all it's missing is some white picket fences, and like everyone's out, everyone's chatting, like everyone's just getting along and having a good time. And I'm like, we need more of that.
yes, yes, we do. Um, For today's episode, we're going to do something a little bit differently. Uh, I'm going to take this opportunity, for Matthew both to have his admin hat on, but also his manufacturing experience, because I'm starting to formalize some concepts around this gap. Like, how many times do we hear people talk about this post sales stuff they want to do in HubSpot? And one of my go-tos right now is just saying, hey, object library, that's a thing. I
Yeah,
have not heard like anytime somebody has said that, like I'm always introducing it to them for the first time. They had no idea it existed, like
yeah,
free or enterprise, like everywhere in between, right?
yeah. If you're
Um, and that,
unprofessional, like it could be to some extent, it could be the reason you don't choose to upgrade to enterprise, because a lot of people choose to upgrade something to enterprise to get custom objects. And object library right now, I think it has five,
for,
four,
yeah,
four
yeah,
objects in there.
appointments, courses, listings, and services.
Services.
And
Um,
and like my advice when they don't have enterprise, I'm just like, pick one of those. Don't worry about the name of the object itself, like manage through the pipeline names, and it can be like a custom object, right? It actually works better because it's actually more real in some cases than a custom object is, because they're
mhm.
very focused on, thankfully, okay, here's a new native object. It's real, does everything the other objects that you expect would do, has everything built out. Except for some Hubble API access, apparently. Um, but we're working on that. Uh,
It's
but
better than
what's
a custom
interesting,
object. It's custom object, you get nothing. You
yep,
get two properties and a name and an object to call on the API, and that's it. So there's definitely a lot more built out for in the object library for sure.
Yeah. And it's a step in the right direction, but immediately one of the first things I heard is like, can we change the names? It's like, well, then it's a custom object. Like, and like part of the point of this journey is not going the route of, all the systems that we're used to seeing out there that's like, hey, blank slate, do whatever you want. Oh, custom objects available at free. Then you build it out exactly how you want in that moment, and nobody can come and support you because you don't name things the same way. There's zero
Yep.
standardization, and that's always, as you move towards customization, that is clearly always on HubSpot's mind, in my opinion. Usually when they say customize, you can find ways where it's like, okay, I can't do everything that I want. And for me, instead of like, complaining about it, I'm usually thankful for the guardrails because it just impacts the customer experience, so quickly as soon
Well,
as
yeah.
you start to just name things differently because you can.
And I think that we are, as putting on my administrator hat now, as HubSpot administrators, like we have to build for what will at some point stop being ours. And like it's very, as a group, we are in high demand, and it's very similar to how the Salesforce administrator system kind of built out to some extent. Because it was a little black box, and for a long time, people were like, I don't know. I know it does things, but I don't know what it does, and I don't know how it works. But I've hired this guy who does know how it works, so we're good. And then that guy goes on vacation, that guy leaves, that guy quits, and now you're left with a very powerful tool that can do a lot for you, that can be 3 seconds away from like breaking its leg and stop working, and you have no clue what you're doing to fix it. And I think that like I've been on both sides of that battle, where I've been an administrator coming in to the build the instance, where like they're like, it's a blank slate, like, hey, we just bought HubSpot 2 weeks ago, please build it. And I've been an administrator coming into a previously built experience. And both, you've got to go in with a mindset of, I'm not building this for me, I'm building it for the business, and what does the business need to survive. And I think there's a little bit of self-preservation in play, like a lot, especially when the job market was hard and very loose. People were like, well, I don't want to build, like, I don't want them to not have to rely on me forever. And I'm like, you're not building a scalable organization if they rely on a single point of failure. And there's people out there who say that. They say like, oh yeah, you can't rely on a single point of failure, while single-handedly being the single point of failure for their organization. And I'm like, you can't say that, and then you can't talk the talk and not walk the walk. Like, I respect that. Like, there was a part of my time where I was like, I don't want to write this stuff down because I have job security. But then I was like, I'm not helping anyone. Like, I'm scaling my team now, and I can say like with full hand, like the amounts of I have institutionalized and not even realized it. And I'm trying to be better about writing stuff down and making sure that we document processes. There's a ton of I just know. And I'm like, you leave an organization, you know it, but you're going to forget it because you stop using it. So I think it's a certain value in definitely documenting and building tools that, if someone does, customize a portal and they pull in these like object library objects, I can come in behind them and say, hey, oh, okay, I can understand your logic. I can understand how you got here. Yes, you document it. And like, we all need to do better at that. And I think AI is going to help a lot with that. Like tools like now out there, like, I'm trying not to name drop, but there's like Tango and Scribe, and even HubSpot has a guide builder as well. Those sort of things are great because they build some, like, make it easy for you to build documentation, because nobody wants to sit and write documentation all day. So, I think those sort of tools are helping with that as well. But the object library kind of creates a sort of like, here's an example that someone else is going to be able to come in and help support down the line. And here's something that we as HubSpot can make sure that we're not building actively against for you. Because I've noticed people build custom objects. Like, there was a point, and I'm grateful I did do this. There was a point where I was like, man, I can't get campaign reporting to work the way I want to. I'm just going to build my own campaign custom object. And I found people who have done that, and they're like, this is better than campaigns because like it reports exactly the way I want to. And I'm like, well, what happens when HubSpot does what it just did, which is like, hey, now we bring campaign reporting into reports and dashboards. And you're like, oh, well, now I have two, and now I have to separate the difference. And then someone's going to come in behind you and go, well, I'm used to using campaigns. What is this custom object that's reporting? Like, why is this here? So I think there's a lot of benefit to HubSpot coming in and saying, here's some pre-built buckets. So I kind of like, and we talked this before we got on the live as well. Like there's a certain amount of pre-built bucket that we can give you, and then you can layer in like industry level templates. But this will get you started with a good baseline. And then you can layer in the industry level requirements that you need. For example, what someone in manufacturing might need for project deliverables is very different from what someone in an agency might need for agency deliverables. But ultimately, it's still deliverables. It's still the same idea, the same concept, just applied in a different fashion for a different industry.
Yes. And to that point, I'm going to start sharing my screen because you use a word there that I've started to push like since maybe September, October of last year. Like we use the word deliverables like all the time.
Yeah,
And yet I have not seen a system where it is like a native part of the system, right? Whether it's a project management tool, whether it's a CRM, an ERP, right? Because we
yeah,
always have our own words
yeah,
for what we're delivering, right? So when I'm thinking in this way, and this is where I'm glad, HubSpot seems to be going this way as they try to create this land of everything is an object and, you know, configurability, not necessarily customizability, but
yeah,
configurability that can serve everyone. You have to create some sort of general standardization, and that's what they're thinking about from an object perspective, right? Uh, and then layer templates on top, layer like specific use case builds on top of that. And that's where we have the properties and the pipelines. And what's been interesting to see because I tried to do what I'm going to talk about, like everybody does first with line items, right?
yeah.
We all want line items to be so much more, and they're just not. And now I feel
You
like
come
I
to terms with
understand
it.
that. Well, they serve a very specific use case, right?
Yeah,
So what I'm showing here, deliverable object, like what is the gap that I'm talking about here, right? And I use manufacturing just because that's where I'm from. But what
yeah.
I learned very quickly is that this is a B2B problem in that
Hmm.
this transition, this handoff, and granted, like you start to think about all the things you hear about, like the handoff between sales and delivery is
Yeah,
always a challenge in most organizations. And when you look at these systems we've had, like they haven't been great. And um, that's where this gap of, because I was watching it happen in ERP and then I tried to do it in HubSpot. And I'm like, oh, the way that line items are built out do not serve post sales activity like at all, right?
yeah.
And so talk to people like Kyle and George, because I'm trying to be a good admin. Like, let's not make a custom object like
Right,
that mirrors something that already exists in the system, right? Like I was
right.
told.
Because you don't want to you don't want to reinvent the wheel. And I think it's very, very valuable point that deliverables are unique in the sense that like I can see many use cases outside of even like, especially when you expand from out of just like manufacturing use cases and look at business to business use cases. When we're talking about what I like quote refer to as um, unattainable products, we can sell a service. A service is something you can touch and feel, but it has a longevity to it. It's not like a shipped item where it's like if I'm selling a box of, it's not e-commerce, which is like you come to my store, you buy a set of AirPods. Okay, you've bought the set of AirPods. I need to send an order to my fulfillment team to send you the pair of AirPods. My work is done. And that's very, very short-term version because also there's some sort of warranty that goes on the back of that. But like it's very like it's not that. A lot of times service delivery is we're going to offer you a service for X number of months or X number of points or X number of hours, and or we're going to, provide you something that has multiple outputs. Like I previously worked for Masonite, it's a door company, and I can talk about this now because my NDA is expired and the product is live. But we created a door that was a connected door. And people go, well, of course, they're connected to houses all the time, Matthew. And I'm like, yes, but like connected in terms of technology. Like one of the biggest pain points that we saw at that time was that people were buying all this technology to slap on their door, but it all didn't talk to each other. It didn't talk to the door, which seems like a wild concept to some extent, but like it's like I want to buy a lock. So I go on Amazon or I go to my local big box hardware store and I go buy a Yale smart lock. And I slap that thing in the door. So Yale has its own app and Yale has its own um, you know, interface that it works with. And it's battery powered because people are like, what's the easy solution? Slap some batteries, put double A's in there, and we're good to go. You slap that on your door. Well, then the next thing that happens is you like decide, well, I want to change out my doorbell camera. Everyone has camera doorbells now. It's like the new standard. In fact, my builder, when I was building my house, was like, we can install it for you. It's becoming the de facto standard now because nobody wants to answer the door anymore. So the, we do that. That's another system. And it's adapted to infrastructure that is designed to have very low power. Doorbell is step down and all that sort of stuff, but it's next to the door. And we kind of ask the question, like, what else do people care about their entryways? And people talk about like they want a well-lit entryway because it discourages crime and like things like that. So we decided, what if we put it all in the door? What if we just build a door that has all of this connectivity built into it? And then it's not go down a rabbit hole about how that happened, but we got to a point like, okay, well, now we're building this door. We're manufacturing this door. We manufacture the door in our plants. And we worked with partners like Yale and Ring to bring their components on board for our MVP. But, we now need to manage 5 warranties out of this door. So you as a consumer buy one door, you buy a product, but that product contains 5 subproducts that we have to manage in some way through a warranty process, through, maintenance, through stuff like that. The idea of having this deliverable at the end makes that so much more manageable. Because you can see I have this overarching product. I'm going to have many of these overarching products and they can have sub products off of them. But it's just one line item. And like HubSpot can't accommodate that today. You can't ask it to sell a line item that is made of many other products. It can only be made of some part of one.
Yeah. No, I love that example. Because that's where this originated from. Like, first of all, some of the problems that are listed here, like, the limited visibility into order status and delivery progress. Like, we can, as consumers, we can understand the life history of a Domino's pizza, but I'm going to buy a $500,000 piece of equipment from you,
Yeah,
and I have to work my ass off to understand what's going on, like until I get it, right? I'm calling, I'm emailing, there's no there's no logins, right?
yeah,
Oh, we might have some logins to make sure everybody gets paid, right?
yeah,
But as far as order status, right? And that's where it's coming from, where, there might be 20 line items on an order,
yeah,
and it's for a project that lasts like a year or two. And if things change as far as, okay, we were supposed to get this thing from this place, it's delayed, now we got to ship it somewhere else because that's where we
yeah,
are in the state of the project, right? And um, these systems like ERPs, like everybody was always frustrated with, oh, I got to create these $0 items, like just to make sure I know that a warranty is needed or some kind of
yeah,
certificate, right? Any kind of documentation. And I think the reason this has been challenging is just because, as a way to solve for this, everybody's created specific, like, oh, here's your warranty management software, here's your quality management
yeah,
software, here's your, your uh uh your proposal management, so like all these separate softwares, right? So the way to
yeah,
get to this, the people who were solving this problem were spending millions like on their tech
yeah,
stack, right?
yeah,
Everybody else using glorified Google Sheets, basically, right? And almost nothing in the middle, right? And that's where, as soon as HubSpot started going customer platform route, I'm like, oh, we're here. Like, this is
mhm,
why we could solve for digital transformation in a lot of ways. Um, and as soon as I basically got permission from Kyle Jepson, like, go ahead, use custom objects, Chris. uh, yeah, I was like, man, everything just became possible. Like, I can associate the things I need. I don't have to set up special things that are relying on
right,
line items, which nobody likes working with that API. And as I did that, I was also realizing, because of this, because custom objects are relatively new, like when Kyle and I were talking, it's like, yeah, not only should we be able to solve for this multi kind of deliverable scenario through pipelines, doing it that way, we could actually use that to get to reporting insights much more effectively,
Oh yeah,
because inside of this object, we're comparing, you know, pipelines, and the pipelines in this scenario, the pipelines are basically sub objects, right? And, that's how this is powered. And I think since custom objects are new, so many of the use cases, people are not even touching pipelines as a part of their custom objects. They're just like new data containers, right?
yeah,
So that's where, as we get out of deals and tickets, basically, where a lot of this stuff has been forced into, like if you
yeah,
choose to use HubSpot to use it, that's where most of the learning curve has been. Like, yeah, I've associated like a nice customer portal and, there's a custom code of workflow to use with line items, right? Those are the shiny objects. But once you give people this space to work in, like, oh, I don't have to worry about messing with the sales team's deals or the help desk tickets. I can own an object as a post sales person, an order management person, and we can manage it properly. We can name it properly, right? That
right,
started to open. So just the strategy of creating this space, because it's not even about the automation needed to make something off of a line item. It's the fact that a lot of times we sell the thing and then there's other things that come up that we got to do, right?
yeah,
And now we have a place to create those things, call them deliverables, right? And manage them. Like instead of
right.
all the stuff that gets managed, like, when you hear stories like, we got to ask the customer for information about their warranty that we sold them, like, that's not a good place to be.
I think back like all the time. I remember one time going, man, why do like, and this is probably a terrible example, but the best example I can give is you go buy a video game nowadays, and like first of all, let's respect no. I don't think I can't remember the last time I stepped foot in like GameStop or an EB Games, which just dated me horrendously by saying that. But and bought a physical copy of a game. But like when you buy a physical copy of the game, there is this like on the back, on the bottom. I remember this vividly because I was looking through what we have for our Nintendo Switch in the living room, and like on the back of it, there's a thing that says proof of purchase, and I'm like, this is how we track warranties in 2024. It's a slip of paper that says, and I guarantee if something goes wrong with that game, if I call Nintendo or probably the developer, whoever, they're going to say, well, do you have your proof of purchase? And I'm like, you should know. But it's like, no, like you got to take this piece of paper off of your thing and say, go, that I bought it. See, I bought it. I didn't steal it. Like that is the connection to this idea of proof of purchase. So like, I think it's a terrible experience, but we've just like as customers of these companies, we're just like, that's how it is. And I'm like, it doesn't need to be that way. There's a huge room for digital transformation and just better customer experiences. And I think that people are starting to see the value in that more and more and are seeking out companies that provide better customer experiences. And if we can give them the tools to just, and I hate to say it, like people always worry about like, well, MVP is not what we really want. I'm like, but if an MVP is better than what's actively out there, it's better and will improve your visibility so much better.
Yeah, it's better than your current MVP, which is your email inbox. Like,
Yeah.
okay, like, can we get?
And 20 bucks
I
says that
love
email
this.
inbox isn't even connected to HubSpot. It's just an email inbox.
Right. I love discovering like, oh, does the customer need to know this piece of information ever? Do you ever communicate it to the customer? Like when we're figuring out, which properties, need to be on the views so that we have them filled in and people have access. And they don't tell you all of them. So then I changed the question, like, do you ever have to email this information to a customer?
Oh yeah,
Oh
here's a list
yeah.
of 7 things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, well, that could be over here, and now everything's easier for you and template, right? So, oh man, I've loved doing this because it's just like the requirement here is, and this is where we're getting the difference between like HubSpot, what has been and what it is now, right? The difference between customer platform and, marketing and sales engine. right? We
Yeah.
want more communication. We want more data. It doesn't have to be, okay, we can only have the sales data, so we keep everything clean. It's like, no, we've got stuff to do after we close, and we
And I
need
would say
people
that
to know what happened.
we are seeing HubSpot take the time to invest in post sale more so than possibly any other CRM company has, because just this week, the Service Hub team, if you're part of Sprocketeer or join the admin HubSpot user group, you know, the Service Hub team came to the admins and were like, tell us everything you hate about Service Hub. They didn't say it like that, but like essentially they wanted the feedback. They're like, tell us what's driving you nuts at Service Hub. And admins had opinions. I was there. I know you were there, Chris. Like we had
Yeah.
opinions. And like I would say the first one, I love Service Hub, but it's not there. Like it does a good job of the things it does today, but there's so much more room for improvement. And there's so much more room for growth within Service Hub. And I think like the deliverable object is something I could see living under it, even if we start as an object library, but I can see it becoming something that starts to live under the Service Hub umbrella, because it's gonna be very interconnected to ticketing. It's gonna be very interconnected to, how customers interact, like through customer portal, through, chat flows, through Breeze customer agent now. Like that's all gonna be stuff that's gonna pull into deliverables at some point.
Yeah, it's very much an experience management object, and I'm just thinking about it in that term, like as you talk about that, like maybe that's a way to help people. But the I think another key is here is what's laid out here, because there's constantly like people want products to be associated everywhere. They want to be able to do everything with line items, and it's like, yeah, maybe we'll get to that point. Um, but let's understand, like, they have purposes. The way that they're set up now, like when you think about what the purpose is, makes sense in terms of products are the things that we plan, to sell. Maybe we're bringing inventory numbers in, right, from other systems. It's on the shelf, or it's a service, that we plan. Then the line item, and this is where, like, if you want it to be this ultra customizable thing, when I say that here, it's sales, like in the moment, has to be able to change information about the thing, and you probably don't want it to impact the original product library, because they're doing it in the moment. And not only that, they can create new ones that don't exist anywhere, right? And you also don't want those saved anywhere, right?
Yeah,
The last use case I like highlighting is like, how often do we have 3 line items and it's like one of this, 10 of the same thing, 100 of the same thing? So like
right,
imagine if we had that in object record form. Are we like deleting the two that they didn't choose
right,
after? Like like it just doesn't make sense. But then you have to go from just ultra customizability to deal closed, and nobody should touch this thing now.
right.
Right? And that's
Lock it
why
in.
it's so hard to change a line item like outside of a deal, right?
Yeah,
Because when people are signing contracts on the promises that they see on the quote that are based in, like, you don't want people changing stuff, right?
right.
And that also means like any kind of visibility you give, like I'm starting to think through this out loud. It's like, okay, maybe this is why reporting's so hard, because if you give people more visibility, like then they're gonna want to do more stuff, and they shouldn't,
Mhm.
they can't, like, uh so that's where it's, maybe we've tried to solve for this with tickets or new deal pipelines. And that's where I give credit to the ecosystem and figuring out ways to solve for this via deals and tickets pipelines. Lots of creative ones out there. But when you
Yeah,
see somebody's start, like from lead to delivery, everything is in a deal. There's like no closed one like reporting happening, because it just
I mean,
goes.
I've seen people do, and the risk with deals too is that like deals is built for close one and then you're done. One and done is a phrase I say all the time. Like when you're close one, it stops being a deal problem. And I've seen deal pipelines where close one is 6 stages because they're continuing to use it to report on things. I'm like, you need to move that out of here. Like you need to move that to at least a ticket pipeline. Some places they'll do it on their deal pipeline. I've done that before, where like the revenue continues into post sale. And the only risk with that is that you have a risk of like screwing up your sales reporting, because you're not going to make sure you isolate the pipelines you have and make sure those pipelines aren't talking to each other, and your attribution can get messed up because now you're creating a new deal after a deal was closed, one that's not a renewal, it's something else. And like you've got to be very on top of that and understand the long-term implications of something like that. So I think it's, we need something that isn't deals, but truly isn't tickets either. And because tickets really is designed to be a short-term stop in the journey. It is not designed to be a project management tool. And like you said, I've seen people build amazing project management tools and ticket pipelines, frankly. And those are the times I question, like, HubSpot is a CRM, it's not a project management tool. Could it be a project management tool? Probably. But is that why are you like trying to overbuild something that was never built to be delivered that way?
Yeah. And that's how I had to start talking about it, because like
Yeah.
there's a ton of overlap. And when you start to realize that all these pipeline mechanisms are just staging gate project management, that's all they are,
Yeah.
right? But then the superpowers of what we expect out of the native objects, like that's where its deals are designed for sale, for the management of a sale. Like
Yeah.
that's what they're designed for. So if you try to manage anything else there, you're gonna have to get creative with the way you name things and how other people from not sales come in and do stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then tickets is a help desk. It's for help desk management for reactive,
Yeah.
motions. Now you can, because that's like, you know, it's a different type of project management, less attached to revenue. It doesn't feel as unnatural to build like fulfillment pipelines and things like that. And even I was doing that for a long time. But that's where, when you try to, where they're going, like, so I think a part of what I hope to see is like success and service, like
Yeah.
like reactive and proactive under the same hub, right?
Yeah.
I can already see some stuff happening there, but I was excited to see customer success happening. But that's the difference, right? We need proactive things
a
that
hundred
are
percent.
built, to support that, right? And that's where, as we kind of create that space, but then we think about all the different ways that people, what they need to do after post sales, like
And how every
the
tool is
direction
different.
where,
Yeah.
yeah, the direction we're going, where everything is an object, we're going to end up with like 100 objects in the
Yeah.
system because we do need to manage all these specific things. And that's where this, again, the pipeline is just so powerful. And once you assign, like, all these things that we're seeing on the screen here can be a different pipeline in the sales, in the same object, because those pipeline mechanisms and the properties related to the stages and the gates, that unlocks most of HubSpot for you,
Yeah.
right? In terms of automation and list segmentation and all the things, all the building blocks. Like, and so just creating that space has been very powerful to help, people think about HubSpot a little bit differently, and give that space. Meanwhile, like, it didn't take me long to come up with the word deliverable, because it's like we use it all the time. And
Yeah.
I have yet to find anybody say that if I just gave you money, is there anything you can think of that I can't call what you're supposed to give me in return a deliverable,
Right.
right? Almost in every case, right? So that's where, you know, my goal for 2024, and mind you, I've never worked for HubSpot. I have no decision-making power. Like, in there was my goal, my hope for 2024 was to see an order object come to life.
Yeah.
Uh, we're almost there. Um, I think the cash flow acquisition is going to seal that deal in terms of building this new infrastructure that's needed to really support a successful order object.
Yeah.
Now, 2025, the deliverable object is coming. It just
Yeah.
makes way too much sense, man. Way too
Yeah.
much.
And if HubSpot continues to move in this model where they want to expand into more diverse and enterprisey businesses. And I feel like that's HubSpot's position right now is they're trying to be, they have historically marketed to small and medium-sized businesses. And they are trying to move out of that. They're not necessarily leaving it behind because they're still doing stuff to help support SMB, but like they are definitely trying to capture some of that enterprise market share. And I think that like this is a place where currently the what is out there is not thinking about this. It's still very much focused on net revenue and net new revenue. I see the fringes of what Salesforce is doing just because it bleeds into my LinkedIn feed in places. And AI is great. Love AI. This is not AI conversation, but there's a big push in there. That the thing that drove me wild was that Salesforce came out and was like, yeah, we have all these AI agents to help with sales. And I'm like, sales is not where we need help anymore. Like, does they need help? Sure. But again, we are still in this mindset as businesses that we have to focus on new customers and new acquisition, even though for years we have screamed from the rooftops, the money is not in new acquisition. The money is in maintaining who you have. And like the cost to maintain is half that of the cost of net new. And why do we continue to throw money at net new when we just abandon your existing customers? So I think like that is like this movement, if HubSpot can capture that and move into this new sort of building a CRM for, they've built a CRM for salespeople, they've built a CRM for marketing people. Now is the time to build the CRM for success and implementation and delivery that no one else is currently doing right now. And if anyone's skilled to do it, it's HubSpot, in my opinion. So I'm excited to see where this goes. And they're receptive. I say this every time we talk about betas, we talk about that's like HubSpot is exceptionally receptive to hearing customer feedback, and more so than any other company I've worked with. And I think that that is what is somewhat to some extent driving their future now, is they're starting to really lean into it heavily, more than they may have ever have, and build things and deliver things that meet the needs of more and more of their customers.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful thing, and that's like as you described it, like that's how I view the customer platform. Like there's a whole customer journey, and as uh, you know, people creating content and trying to educate, like a bunch of the education we have to do, like relates to the challenge of we all have goals. There's always revenue or growth goals related to, you know, resell, upsell, cross sell, right?
Yeah.
It's always been challenging. And because there's been no visibility, the handoffs suck, all these things that
Mhm.
that we've talked about, and that's where the customer platform, like the rest of the stuff, has been handled. So yeah, a lot of the intention and focus right now is on fleshing out this customer success area, this concept, and it is interesting, like you say, that nobody has really solved for this, and you know, we have to also teach the market, because all those maps that you see about the customer journey, how many of them closed, at least internal to businesses that I've experienced, like how many of them end at closed one?
Yeah.
Like when we're talking about the CRM and customer data, and it's like, oh, the rest of the stuff is handled in the ERP or the account. And it's like, no, it's
Yeah.
not. It's not handled there at all.
Yeah.
So thank you for indulging me
Yeah.
today, in
Talk for
talking about
hours on the
this.
subject.
I know, right?
So
We
long.
could, and I probably will. So, um, yeah, and we'll just assume everybody understands the connection to properties
Yeah. Yeah.
as we talk about
Something
all these
properties.
objects. Yeah.
They all learn properties. Let's just say that.
I mean, I mean, that's the part I love helping with right now. It's like we talked about when I did the object library unboxing. It's like, okay, you guys are adding this property. There's one that looks just like it already on this object. So
Yeah.
maybe you could help us a little bit with the property creep and redundancy. Um,
Yeah.
but again, we come back to that's why standardization and is important, and that's the goal here. So Yeah, it's been fun, man. I appreciate this this episode today. And always think about post sale, think about customer
Yeah.
experience. How can we make it easier for your teams to serve the way you want them to serve? Find those opportunities, and let's grow. Have a great day,
Let's
everybody.
do it. Have a great day, everyone. All right.
Awesome.
Oh.